Helen Starbuck, Tom Farrell, Andre Gonzalez. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I hope anybody watching knows why this particular trio of guests is with us today. You are the 3 Independent Writer of the Year finalists for the Independent Writer of the Year Award from Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, pretty exciting. I mean, the obvious reporter question, so I've got to ask it, how does it feel? What does it mean to you?
Well, it's incredible that fellow writers would do this, as Andre has mentioned. But for me, it's kind of like getting that pony you always wanted for Christmas. You spend your childhood hoping, and then all of a sudden there it is. So thanks to everyone who contributed to the nomination. It's pretty exciting.
Great. Yeah. Andre?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's a huge honor to receive a nomination from fellow writers. We're the only ones who know the struggle that goes into this business, this career, this lifestyle, you could say. So thank you to anyone out there listening who may have nominated us or chosen us to be finalists. It's definitely a very humbling experience.
Tom?
Oh, yes, it is quite an honor. It kind of comes full circle for me when I joined RMFW's critique group at Capitol Hill about 10 years ago. So to now be sitting here possibly be Independent Writer of the Year is really, really great.
That's terrific. Just introduce yourselves to the community and to the podcast, the vast podcast listening audience out there. Could we just go around the horn, and maybe I'll start with Andre this time. Could you just tell us a little bit about, what kind of things you write and how long you've been writing? Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been writing, I've really been writing since I was 12 years old. I started self-publishing back in 2016, so 5 years ago. In that time, I've published 13 books. Number 13 actually releases today as of the recording of this podcast. And yeah, I've found a nice little niche in the horror and thriller genres. More specifically, time travel. My time travel series is the Wealth of Time series. So yeah, that's what's been keeping me busy pretty much most of this whole time.
Great. I'll come back to a little bit more about the content of your books in a second. But Tom, what about you next? Could you just introduce yourself? What kind of stuff you write?
Yes, I write books involved with sports gambling and horse racing and crime. And it also involves legal thrillers. So it's a thriller series. And the first one was published February of this year called Wager Easy. And so I have 3 books already in the series, but only the Wager Easy has been published at this point in time. So we have 2 more in the pipeline. So it's exciting to go through this indie publishing process.
And you've been writing for quite a while.
Yes, I've been writing for a long time. So it's kind of like better late than never kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And Helen, how about you?
I've been writing since probably junior high, mostly to make my introvert life a little more exciting.
So is that about 8 years of writing then, something like
that?
Yeah.
Thank you. And I write mystery and romantic suspense. I have 5 books out now, and 6 should be coming out in the next few months. What was the rest of the question?
Yeah,
That's it.
I want to go back around the horn. It just basically, and I'll start with Helen this time, go back around. Tell us about your latest novel and just, as if you're kind of just pitching that particular book, and just to give us a deeper flavor of your characters and your plots, things like that.
My books are all set in Denver because I'm a native, so it's familiar territory. The book that's coming out is sort of a crime, romantic suspense mess. Uh, the detective that gets called to this home where a stabbing death has occurred realizes when he gets there that he knows the couple, has been friends with them for years, but has been estranged from the couple because he's always carried a torch for the wife, and that's when the couple got married. So the dilemma for him is, does he stay on the case or does he recuse himself? And he chooses, for a lot of reasons, to stay on the case and conceal some of the connections he has with this couple from his partner. He eventually gets suspended for that and continues to investigate, and finally solves the murder and gets the wife, old flame, out of jail. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Is there a working title on that one? Did you mention it?
We finally decided on The Woman He Used to Know.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the theme, you know, he knew her and he's not entirely sure he knows her now. So there's always that question of, did she kill the husband? Because she's the prime suspect. So.
And if I were to say, for the readers of other writers, what other writers would you kind of ping off of to put yourself in the same group with?
Well, I would hope that my books are similar to like Sandra Brown's type of romantic suspense. I aspire one of these days to be as good as Tammy Hogue, but I've got some work to get there. But those are the kind of crime suspense books that I like, and those are authors I really admire.
Tom, you were recently on the podcast, so we can refer some folks back to that podcast for a little more in-depth on Wager Easy, but just to kind of give people a little glimpse of Wager Easy, can you walk us through the world you were writing in and your main characters?
Sure. Wager Easy is a sports betting mystery thriller. And in the book, Eddie and his uncle, a former homicide detective, go to the scene of a murder. And Eddie realizes that the person who's murdered in signature mob style, I won't get into the grisly details, is a friend of his from the racetrack. And it turns out this friend of his works for Wager Easy, which is a Euro sports betting conglomerate trying to move into the United States market in November of 2018 in Chicago. Now that the sports betting laws are about to be changed due to the Supreme Court decision. So mob gambling boss feels that he's being framed for this murder. So he asks Eddie and his uncle to solve the murder for him. So Eddie goes undercover at Wager Easy to find the killer.
Very good. Very good. Andre, walk us through your latest book, either one that just came out today or the one before it, whatever you want to do. This is pretty exciting news. We're talking on the day of a release. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was not planned out that way. But yeah, today released my book called Time of Fate. It's actually the 6th and final book of my Wealth of Time series. So I can't say I necessarily want to go into too much about that to avoid spoilers and whatnot. So I guess I can give more just an overview of the series as a whole now that it's done.
Sure.
Awesome. So yeah, it's really, so like Helen, pretty much all my books take place in Denver. I'm a native as well, so this is no different. And really what it's about is my main character, an older man named Martin Breyer. He had lost his daughter when she was 12 years old, doesn't know why, she just went missing. So doesn't know if she's necessarily kidnapped, murdered, what it may be. So he stumbles into an antique shop and meets a gentleman who gives him the opportunity to travel back in time and figure out what happened all those years ago. Unbeknownst to him, he's really getting invited into this whole wide world of time travelers who have their own agenda, their own politics and government, and just their own way of life, really. So throughout the series, we just kind of follow Martin along as he's, first trying to grapple with the terms of what happened to his daughter, and then really watching him grow within this time travel universe, where he ends up having to conquer evil, I guess is the best way to put it.
Does the portal in the antique shop deliver him to a certain point in time, or is it multiple points in time, or does it just go in all sorts of different directions?
Yeah, so no time portals actually.
Okay.
Put a different spin on. I use more of the bootstrap paradox is how it's referred to. So in this universe, everyone has like a big bottle of juice, and all they need is a little sip, and they just have to think about where they want to go, and it will take them there.
Wow. I think I just got a good new band name, Bootstrap Paradox. I think that'll work. I like that. Well, yeah, I assumed it was a portal. That was my bad. And I was probably running to a cliche, which I shouldn't do. So there you go.
No worries.
That's great. I love it. Wow. It sounds like you have lots of possibilities in that world, even though you're wrapping up the series. You're shutting it down.
Shutting that series down, I am planning a spin-off series to just kind of keep further diving into different eras of time and playing with different parts of history.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go around. I got one more sort of question for each of you, and then let's just kind of chat about a few things in more of a group form. But could you, and I'll start with Tom this time, just talk about what kind of RMFW has meant to you and your writing career, helping you, bring you along, whatever it might be. And RMFW is one part of the question, but also just other writing friends and having networks. A lot of people think writing is a solo act, and it certainly is, but there's good to have community, wouldn't you say, Tom?
Oh, definitely. And it all started with that critique group that I mentioned, and the chance to learn all these different kinds of books writers were coming up with. And so when I think of RMFW, I think of resources and writers. So it's kind of like two sides to the coin. It's been great. Through the critique group, after critique, we would go to the neighborhood bar, and I'd find out more about the writing process there than I ever did at critique. So that was a terrific education.
Writer's drink?
Well, no, well, it was just root beer or something.
Oh, okay. All right. I just want to check. Yeah. Okay.
Very serious.
That was a close one. Okay. Wow.
Very serious stuff.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Helen, what about you? What does RMFW mean to you?
For me, it was a chance to connect with other writers, because when I first started my mystery series, I was, kind of working in isolation. This was a story I had started years ago and came across the first 4 chapters that had kind of been put on the shelf. And so I'm a big believer in professional organizations. I think it's a great way to meet new friends, really, and make connections, which I have done. And it's just a great group. It's really supportive. There doesn't seem to be any hierarchy between traditionally published authors and independently published authors, which in some groups there can be. So I've just, you make connections, you meet people, they can send you in the right direction for experts and other people you need to talk to. So for me, that's been the biggest benefit.
Yeah. Andre.
RMFW has been just a tremendous vehicle for me. I mean, when I first published 5 years ago, I was very much just in it by myself. I had no network of author friends, no sort of guidance or anything like that. Fortunately, I was invited to the summer party that year. It was still a few months before I published. I was invited by everyone's good friend, Veronica Callisto. I'd actually worked with her, and she told me about this event and I should come by. And it's been all uphill from there. That's where I met a lot of my friends who I'm still friends with today. Back then, I was introduced to Stephanie Reisner, who at the time was the head of IPAL. And here I am these years later, the head of IPAL myself. So it was nice to see that, kind of come full circle. Now I'm the one in the position to hopefully, help guide new people to whatever path they may want to take.
That's great. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about what Helen brought up, just the whole decision to go indie versus, go down that agent path, a path that then would, maybe lead to a traditional deal or not, you just never know. Could you just talk a little bit about, I don't know who wants to go first, just your thought process about that, because that is a big decision.
Well, I'm happy to go first. For me, the decision was made by New York editors because I had an agent in 2016 for the first book in this series, which will be coming out next, the prequel to Wager Easy. And he was a well-known agent, and we got good feedback from the New York editors, but the marketplace just wasn't right, or my book wasn't right for the market and that sort of thing for that kind of mystery thriller. So I talked more with people at RMFW, and they encouraged me to give this indie route a try, and I'm glad I have.
So you feel like, Tom, that basically you just got the word back from New York, so to speak, the big official gatekeepers, publishers, your agent, just saying this particular book at this particular time is probably not going to sell. So you chose the other route, going independent.
That's right. I especially Wager Easy, which is the third book in the series, seems so timely with the changes in the sports betting laws. So that was another reason to get it out there and go down the indie route.
And with good results, with some fantastic reviews, including from Kirkus. Yeah, fantastic. Helen, do you want to just chat about your decision-making on this whole process? I know there are lots of writers out there today who may have an agent and are waiting to hear and waiting to hear and waiting to hear and waiting to hear. And they know that option is there.
Yeah.
What went into your thinking?
Well, this is sort of my weird sense of humor, but my father passed away at 71, and my thought was, well, we never know how much time we have. And with my editor, she was saying, well, you can go one of two ways. She said, you can go the traditional way, in which case she said it's probably at least a 3-year time frame to find an agent and have the agent try and find a publisher. So she said it could be, 3 years or more till you see your book in print. Or she said you could do the indie publishing. And I thought, well, it's a balancing act. My mother lived to be 95, so, who knows? But my thought was I wanted to see these books in real life. And it was hard for me to think about waiting that long. So I have enjoyed the indie publishing route. Gives me a whole lot more control over covers and, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's been a good choice. Now, if an agent or somebody approached me and said, we really like this book and let's do it, I'd probably say, yeah, let's give it a shot. See where we can go with it. I mean, I'm not opposed to traditional publishing. I guess I'm a little too impatient.
Hey, well, 3 years is a long time, and I think that's sort of a minimum.
Yeah.
So Andre, what about, sounds like you really made this decision early on, just boom, going indie. That's my sense.
I did. I mean, pretty much once I found out indie publishing was a thing, an option, I was all about that. A couple of factors at play here. One, kind of similar to Helen, of being impatient. I also had a sort of eye-opening experience, I guess you could say. I survived the Aurora theater shooting.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it was at that time where I really sat down and said, okay, what am I doing with my life? Clearly tomorrow is not promised. So that's when I decided to really get back into writing seriously and really jumping in. And same kind of thing. It's like, traditional route can take, this amount of time. I'm like, I just don't know if I'm going to be here in that amount of time. So I'd rather do something I can jump right into right away. And yeah, it's been a great vehicle for me since then. it's really, I don't know. I like to think of myself as a very urgent person. Maybe not necessarily impatient, but urgent. Like if my book's done, I want to get it to the next phase and get it out into the world. So yeah, that's indie has always been my option from day one, and probably always will be. But like Helen said too, if New York comes calling and they want to pick up a series or approach me about whatever it may be, I'm absolutely all ears.
Yeah.
Wow. Andre, without dwelling on it too much, would you mind talking a little bit more about that? You were writing before you were in that theater that night, and I assume you were in the theater, not working at the theater.
Correct. Yeah, I was there as a guest. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been writing since I was 12 years old. So 2002. And then, by the time I got to high school, college, I wasn't really focused on my writing. I was just being a high schooler and a college student. So it was at that time after the shooting had happened is when, life kind of came back into perspective and really just woke me up. So, okay, it's time. I've always dreamed about, having a career as a writer. Now it's time to just focus on that and jump right in. So I haven't looked back since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk a little bit about each of your processes, kind of a traditional question, but I think writers really like to know, and everybody's got a different flavor and a different approach. We're all different. We have different schedules and different work needs, things like that to put, keep the roof over our heads and some cereal in our bowl. What, maybe starting with Helen, what's your schedule look like? How do you go about writing?
Well, I'm not working any longer, so my schedule is kind of my own, and that's a blessing. And I pretty much write every day, but the time frame can be very different depending on what's going on. I guess my process is ideas come to me and I let them cook for a while, and then I just start writing. Now, the downside to that is I often have to go back and then write a timeline out and plot it after I've gotten started. So it often means that I have to go back and revise and whatnot. So it's probably not the most efficient way of writing, but in professional writing, I was a nurse and worked for a nursing journal for quite a while. I can outline with the best of them because it's kind of a start at A and end at Z. For my fiction writing, I just can't do that at the start. So that's how I work.
Yeah, well, you're in the good camp. Outliners, I have no use for them. So, welcome to my club. That's the only way to go. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I can't imagine writing an outline either. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for my brain.
Yeah. Tom, what's your daily focus look like?
Well, I'm a pantser as well. And I always read what I wrote up until that point, if I can. If it's 200 pages, well, that'll be a little bit challenging, but at least 50 or 60 pages. And usually I write every day, and I try to leave off where I know what's coming next so that I can kind of think about that and build some momentum to the next day. And by reading what I just had written, in the last 30, 40 pages, that gets me into that framework, gets me into the groove, so to speak. And then I have to go back after I get towards the end and do a little bit more plotting and backfill, and especially with a mystery where you've got kind of an intricate thing going on. You do have to go back and do a lot more with it. But every week I bring it into my critique group. I'm in 2 of them now. One deals just in mysteries, and one deals in a lot of different subjects. So it's good to get that feedback and see what they're thinking of those particular 8 to 10 pages.
Wow. So reading the previous 30 or 40 pages must take you a little while, and then you add do you have a goal of adding 1,000 words or 2,000 words a day, something like that? Or
My goal is usually if I can get through about 5 to 8 pages, I feel like I've had a pretty productive day.
wow, that's impressive to go back that far and reboot yourself, so to speak, with your story. Wow. Andre, you sound like you really have a system.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to. My life is pretty hectic. So I still have a full-time job. Fortunately, it's, traditional hours, Monday through Friday. Well, maybe early hours, 6 to 2 sort of job.
What do you do?
I work in finance, company called On Deck. We do a lot of funding for small businesses.
Wow.
Yeah, so COVID has been interesting for us. We kind of had a lot of ups and downs, but have stayed busy for sure.
Wow. So you day job, and do you write before the day job, after?
A little
Both.
before, a little during. I can usually find still an hour or so throughout the day to kind of sprinkle in some words, and then definitely at night. So I'm also married and have 3 kids who are 6 and under. So once they're in bed at 8, it's right back to the laptop to start writing, editing, checking up on my ads. Yeah, it's very hectic. A lot of late nights, early mornings. But at this point in time, I don't even notice I'm tired anymore. I just kind of power through. And yeah, I still write 1,000 words a day. I try to edit at least 2 chapters a day as well. So I'm always writing one book and editing a different book. It just helps my mind kind of stay balanced that way. That way, I feel like I never run into writer's block or anything like that, because I can always, shift gears and go edit something else and kind of clear my head that way.
Well, I can tell with each of you that just listening to you, this whole writing business, despite the challenges, brings you a lot of joy. Each of you, you can tell this is something that means a lot to you. Andre, starting with you, I mean, this is clearly, just by that description alone, this is not something you're, having to force yourself to do. This is really a source of pleasure for you.
Absolutely. It's pleasure, it's therapy. I mean, I'd say after the theater shooting, it definitely was a good form of therapy for me to just be able to sit down and write. Just kind of let emotions out that way, because I am also very introverted, like many authors. So it's always nice to even it's just writing it to a page, telling it to a piece of paper, getting those words off the chest. Yeah, it's just been a fun ride. I've been fortunate where I've got to see really the progress with each book release, kind of my career slowly growing and coming together, a good foundation forming.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Tom or Helen, on just what writing means to you in terms of being a source of joy or pleasure?
Yeah, I would say that writing is a real discovery process. I practice law, and so when you have a case, you're involved with that discovery process along the way. So with a book, you're also involved with that as far as finding out what your particular characters are like, what they really want, what motivates them. And at the same time, you're doing research on maybe what's going on with these characters. For me, it was further research into the industry of sports betting and the whole Euro sports betting scene coming over here to the States, and as well as the small independent bookie and research into how they did their jobs. So, and then comparing the two and how they might react to each other and how murder might enter into that situation. So that's kind of the fun part and challenging part for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think for me, it has always been sort of therapy. I remember as a kid, I cut my teeth on mysteries and, Daphne du Maurier and Mary Stuart and the classics, Jane Eyre and those types of books. And those sort of took me out of junior high and high school, where I was socially not talented. And, I could kind of create a world or dip into a world with a book that was more pleasing and more entertaining. And I think the same thing now. I think the thing that I have enjoyed the most about writing is, creating the worlds, creating these characters, but also meeting the people I have connected with to get their expert feedback, people that are experts in certain areas of, crime or policing or even medicine. My specialty was the operating room. And so I have a vague idea how other areas in the hospital work, but, I had to find an ER nurse and an ER doc, and I had to find a homicide detective, and it's been fascinating. So I love learning new things, and this gives me an excuse to learn about things that I, have never had a chance to learn about. So it's great.
That's awesome. So Andre mentioned that he checks his ad campaigns or his ad, what's happening with his ads every day. And a lot of people think, well, if you go with traditional publishing, the one thing that they're going to help you with is marketing and getting the word out, which of course, if you pay attention to the conversation out there, they don't really do all that much. We all have to market independence and traditionally published. Talk about, you've got these books, talk a little bit about or share some tips you might have for anybody out there about getting the word out. You've written these great books. What's your best strategy for letting and finding your audience, I guess?
So for me, it's always been, right now I should say it's a focus on really two things, growing the audience and then pushing sales, kind of two different channels that way. So I have written a few shorter novellas that I use as reader magnets, as they're called. So really just, short little stories you can offer for free in order to get someone on your mailing list. So I've done that. They're all tied into my existing series. So that way they're not just completely, unrelated to anything else I've written that I want people to buy. So I really use those and leverage those. I'm constantly in cross promotions with other authors. We push each other's books, get each other's subscribers that way. So that's how I focus on gaining and growing an audience. Aside from that, I have been dabbling a lot in Facebook ads and Amazon ads. And I'm really just finding, if you have a series, a good long series, let's say even 3 books or more, you can definitely make it work to turn a profit. You just, invest all your money to promoting book 1 and then let the readers take the rest from there. And that's really been my bare bones strategy. And it's been working.
I like it. Tom or Helen, any marketing tips?
Well, as far as my marketing tips go, I'm only a few months into the process, but I've discovered through friends and at RMFW, these underground writing groups where you can do certain promos like at Fussy Librarian and Book Gorilla and some of these. So that's been a lot of fun. And I did some Facebook ad campaigns and other ad campaigns that Andre mentioned. So the jury's still out on whether or not this is all going to work. And I'm not exactly a master yet of social media, so it should be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of the same way as Tom was talking. For me, it's kind of a fluid process. I've had success with some things. I am finding a lot of connections and a lot of interactions on Instagram. I interact with folks on Facebook as well. So I've done Facebook ads, and I've done a few online book tours. There's a company that's called I Read Book Tours. And the biggest help with that has been getting people on my email list. And I just recently did a cross promotion with another author. So we'll see how that worked. It was a lot of fun, and I would love to do that again. But I think it's kind of a try something and see if it works. And if it works, keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, find something else. And it's just this constant, okay, well, what do I try now? But I agree with you, Mark. I don't think the big publishers do a whole lot of marketing from what I understand. So again, and with COVID, I used to love going to open mic readings and book clubs. I've still done several book clubs over Zoom, but it's not quite the same. I mean, it works, but so I'll be glad when things settle down a little and we can go back to doing that, because that's been fun. And I think when you can connect with people, that's when you get readers who hang around.
Right, right. So final question for me. I know we could talk all day and I would love to do that, but for the sake of all of our time and getting back to writing, right? What would be the one thing, if you could go back to yourself on the day you started writing fiction, the very first day you started writing fiction, what would be the one thing you know now that you wish you could tell that somewhat younger person, in Andre's case, only a few years younger, but somewhat younger person to do differently about your writing career? Maybe start with Tom.
If I could do time travel back.
Andre will take care of that. Andre will take care of your time travel.
I need some of that magic juice. Andre, come over. Appreciate that. I would tell that younger person to get in a critique group sooner.
Great advice.
Yeah, I would have to echo that in the sense that it took me a very long time to feel comfortable sharing my writing with other people. And that has been a huge help. The feedback is usually really, really helpful. So I think that's what I would tell my younger self. Keep writing, let people see it, and listen to what they have to say. I've always said that a bad review isn't necessarily bad. And if you get several and they're all saying the same thing, you need to sit down and look at what they're saying and see if you can fix it if it needs to be fixed. So I guess that would be my advice.
Andre.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of have to play off that too. I'd say even if you're just starting writing, maybe you're not even thinking about publishing yet, but you should still go out and meet other authors. There's just so much value and education once you start networking with other authors, so much you can learn and grow from. Another thing I would say is to read widely, read outside of your typical genres you read. I've started reading romance, and there's so many like new skills and things I want to try out in my own writing, just to kind of weave it all in together. So the wider you read, the more you're going to grow as a writer.
Yep, I agree.
Fantastic. Well, I lied. It wasn't the last question. The last question is our traditional podcast wrap-up question. And I'm putting some of you on the spot. I've given you no warning at all unless you listen to the podcast. And that is just a chance to recommend one other writer out there that you think more people should be reading. Just a chance for each of you to kind of pay it forward. And it can be a big name, could be somebody that you think more people should be discovering. So maybe start with Helen.
I recently found an author. I believe he may be independently published. He writes a very interesting canine series. His name is Gordon Carroll, and his first book is called Sheepdog. And the thing I really like about this is he's a retired canine cop, and he has a very old dog that's retired and this young new dog who's a very alpha dog. And the thing I like about the series is that it tells the story from the handler's point of view, and it tells the story from the dog's point of view. And it's fascinating. Obviously we don't necessarily know what dogs are thinking, but he has a real gift for making it feel very real, like you're in this dog's head, and so I'm enjoying that. So I would suggest this fella, and of course with the big writers, love Tammy Hogue and Tara French. Those are two authors that I really enjoy.
I'm sorry, you don't know what dogs are thinking. I know what dogs are thinking, but Tom,
Well, I think we all think we do, and that's probably close.
Tom,
Well, in my last podcast, I mentioned Carla M.J. and her recent book, It Happened in Silence. And Carla recently had another author on in a Zoom session, the author Mark A. Sullivan, who you may be familiar with. He has a bestseller out there called Under a Scarlet Sky, which is a historical World War II fiction. And it's really a great book. And he's got another one coming out soon. It's like, I think next month. And he was telling us about it, called The Last Green Valley. And it's also a World War II book about people trying to escape Poland who are of German ancestry. And it's like they're against a rock and a hard place. The Russians are coming after them on the one hand, and they've got to go with the Nazis, who they call the wolves, on the other hand. And it promises to be quite a read.
good deal. Excellent. Andre,
Yeah, I'll give two recommendations, one for each genre I write in. Horror-wise, I love Darcy Coates. She is an indie author down in Australia. I forget if it's Australia or New Zealand. It's one of those two down there. She's a phenomenal horror writer, writes a lot of haunted house stories, among some other things. So if you like horror, check her out. If you do like time travel, I would recommend a Sean Inman, I-N-M-O-N. You'll constantly see him at the top of the charts. He is an indie author. We've recently connected on Facebook, so I'm looking forward to, once again, networking with someone else who's a little more successful. And I know him and I are planning to get together in Vegas for the 20 Books Conference this November.
Nice.
fantastic. Well, again, Andre, Tom, and Helen, congratulations to all of you on the nomination. And thank you so much for this great conversation today. And keep us posted on all your, progress, journey, everything. And best of luck to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.